Okay, folks, it looks like we're on air.
Yep.
And
Kevin, you good?
I'll call this May
another
25th regular meeting to
Okay,
order.
I guess we're underway.
Motion to adopt the agenda. Councilor Korolek, Councilor Thompson, all those in favor. And we have minutes from May 11th. Can I have a motion to adopt the regular meeting minutes of May 11th? Councilor Korolek, Councilor Krog, all those in favor. Any business arising or anything from those matters? Councilor Moslin?
Just a question here, Mayor, on business arising. Was wondering if what we received the response from the tennis for the pickleball court, and I was wondering what was the result of that. Were the pickleball courts ever open? Thank you.
I'll pass this back to Mr. Redfern. I know we've had some discussion on it. Duncan?
Yeah, so through your worship, no, they are not currently open. And at the end of the agenda today, the last resolution, we'll get into a little more detail regarding the reopening of facilities, parks, open spaces.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further on that matter. We move on to our first delegation, which is Mr. Varabioff. And is he appearing?
Yeah, we're just joining him into the meeting. Hello.
Hi, Chuck. Welcome.
Okay, we gotta unmute.
You're muted.
There.
You have to unmute yourself, Chuck.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I'm good to go. How are you?
We're good.
Hopefully everybody's staying safe, and it's nice to see the river is coming down a little bit.
Yes. We well, I'm hoping to say that the 18th was the high water mark.
Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, so Mr. Varabioff, you go ahead and make your pitch. Council, I'm sure, has read with interest your submission, but can we be making the decision immediately here, but we'll address it later on in the meeting. So go ahead, you're on air.
Okay, it's not much of a pitch. I have 15 acres of property down behind Silver Kettle on 68, and it's all fenced, irrigated. I'm sure you guys have all seen it. And I want to put in a temporary and or permanent drive-in theater there. And it will be, it's going to be obviously social distance compliant. We will have restrooms, we'll have all the running water, we'll have everything we need there. And the one thing I know people do have concern about is the screen. But the screen's inflatable, so at the end of the night, you pull a plug and it deflates and folds up and nobody even knows it's there until next weekend. And as of right now, we will be allowed to have 50 cars in there. And if you look at it, Extra Foods, Overweighty, any of the stores downtown, 50 cars is absolutely nothing. That's about a quarter of a parking lot, maybe. So at the end of the night when we turn the lights on, which aren't going to be blinding like the ballpark lights, there'll be LEDs that light up the roadway enough for people to leave. They'll be leaving out the west end by the pump house there and hopefully going towards Sprague Bridge or up by Extra Foods onto the main highway and home. And there will be zero noise because everything is done through a person's FM radio. So if you don't have a radio, unfortunately, you can't take advantage of the drive. And so anyways, that's it. We want to do something, and it's not about, for me, it's not about making millions of dollars, because when you do the math on it, I'm allowed 50 cars at 25 a car load, that's $1,250. You minus the cost of the movie you minus the insurance, you minus all the costs we have for this, and I might walk out of there with $200 to $300 a night. So it's more about giving something to the community, so the people of Grand Forks have something to do. And obviously, I'm not going to go broke doing it, but I want to give something reasonable back to the public in Grand Forks who have supported me for the last 5.5 years of my music festival. And so when I knew I was going ahead with this meeting today, I figured I'd put something out on Facebook to see the public's reaction. And I know some of you listening to me right now follow me on Facebook, and there's been close to 1,000 shares of the original post, and all the comments, 100% of the comments have been positive and supportive.
Okay, questions. Councilor Krog, you had your hand up, but you took it down. Did you want to ask a question or say something? You're muted, Councilor. Trying to lip read, but...
Yeah, can't hear him. Hi, how are you?
Yeah, you were muted. Should you need to unmute yourself if you want to speak?
I thought I did, but no, I was just going to ask about the 50 cars, but Chuck already covered that.
Okay, and Councilor Moslin, then Councilor Thompson.
Yes, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Chuck, for bringing this idea through. It certainly sounds like a rethink of family entertainment, family recreation in terms of the COVID. So many people are trying to cope with what the new reality will look like. I do have one concern about it, and that is the concern about egress, in and out. You talked about the exit coming in onto 68th. Is that where you see the entrance as well? Do you see a separate entrance? And yeah, I guess that'd be my only concern, is if there is a bit of a parade. I don't think it would be extraordinary, no. But those roads are somewhat undeveloped at this point, although I certainly would like to see them developed in time too. So that'd be my question through you, Mayor, about egress in and out.
Yeah, you want to respond?
Yeah, no problem. The entrance and the exit will be the same. Simple answer, but also too, on that note, we will be pre-selling tickets online. So when you buy them, you have to purchase your ticket online with your name and your vehicle. So when you come in, it's going to make it a streamlined entry right at the entrance there. You'll show your ID and your ticket, and then the parking attendants will park the cars properly. But if there's a bit of a lineup, it'll go more down towards the south end. South end, is that the south end of Extra Food. So there's absolutely zero homes or residences down there. And I also would like to see 68th Avenue developed and paved. That would be ideal. I know there's no money in the budget for that, and there probably won't be for many years, but that's the only street, and I know it's blocked off behind Silver Kettle, so people can't even drive between our property and Silver Kettle anymore. So, and we'll make it clear when people buy the tickets and they get their email where the entrance and the exits are, so they're not cruising around the neighborhood looking and disturbing people.
Thank you, and Councilor Thompson.
Well, good morning, Chair. Just a couple of questions. First of all, I did read one concern on Facebook with respect to the bathrooms not only being cleaned daily and not after every use. So have you given any consideration to that? Having that like an attendant?
Yes, we have, and we're going to clean them as often as necessary. Now, we can't be in there 24/7 cleaning them, but we will clean them as often as we have to, and we will monitor them. And I am gonna put a hot water tank there, against, in one of my, buildings there, and I'll have running hot and cold water for hand washing. But the porta potties themselves, we will clean them as often as we can. I am gonna buy my own, so I can modify them inside, and I'll put, hand wash, no touch hand wash with Purell in there, so people are able to use that. And when they leave, they're, just lather up your hands with Purell, push on the door. But we will clean them as often as we can. But like I say, I can't have someone there 24/7, but they definitely will be monitored and cleaned. They will only be pumped out once a day because that's another added cost that we can't have a pump truck on site 24/7.
Yeah. Okay, and the other question I had is with respect to the concession, and, the selling of during the intermission. Are you gonna have people going around to the cars to sell stuff, or are you gonna have a place where people have to actually go and make their purchase?
We are following the guidelines. Right now, there's no concessions allowed, no food or drinks allowed of any kind. Now, I don't know if that means like vending machine snacks. If pre-packed stuff like popcorn, chips, licorice, chocolate bars, cans of pop, and water, if those are allowed, then I'll have someone on one of our gators, our little portable SUV, little portable vehicles. They'll be driving around and in between the rows of cars, and they will have a credit card machine so people can tap, and then everything will be pre-packed. There'll be, unfortunately, no fresh popcorn, no fountain drinks, no hot dogs, no food of any kind that has to be prepared on site.
Great, thank you.
And Councilor Zielinski and Councilor Moslin, you still have your hand up. Did you want to be after him, or you just left it up? You're okay here, but you're blocked.
Okay, thank you.
Zielinski, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome, Chuck.
Thanks.
As you've probably been told, in our zoning bylaw, we don't have drive-in movie theater. So this is a bit of a different flavor for everybody, and especially the community. And so going from an empty field with nothing in it to a movie theater in your backyard for 3 nights a week is a bit of a change for the people. And as you've already mentioned with your Facebook posts, it's good to know what the community thinks about it, whether they'll go there, and also the neighbors, and see what they think about it. So I'm looking forward to asking the community what they think, get their response, and so that we can sort of try and move forward on one of here, and see how we can tap dance that. But definitely the input from the people that are surrounding the area is going to be good for me to know. And I guess what sort of highlights in my mind is, I think it was Global News I saw, where a business in downtown Vancouver left their lights on overnight, and it was a bit of a difference for those people. So I hopefully the neighborhood will accept this in your backyard, and I look forward to see how the process unfolds. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And to expand on that, I'll tell you, to go from a dirty, weedy, dusty field that one spark would have torched the entire Bryson place. If there would have been a wind and any sort of spark in there, that place or Silver Kettle would have been leveled with fire. So I think we've done a hell of a job to develop and beautify that piece of property that was nothing but barren land in there. And I get comments all the time of people who absolutely love what we do. So, and it's not like we're going to a full-blown movie theater. It's going to be, when you look at it, it's a 40-foot wide screen, 40 feet out of 15 acres. So that's like 0.001% of the entire property size that we're going to have an inflatable screen in there. So hopefully people won't have a problem with that, but I've also, I've had the public reach out to me, which was Silver Kettle, and they're hoping that they're able to go out back to their balcony or up top and listen and watch the movie itself. So right away, without you even canvassing any of the neighborhood, I'm getting the public support without us having to even go talk to any of the neighbors. So, I do think it will be well received.
Yeah, and I don't want to I don't want to minimize what you've done there already. It's just and you know this, you've gone through the rezoning on that property before, going from an empty field one day to 50 vehicles in your backyard, so to speak. It is a difference. So obviously we'd like to know what the other.
Well, it is, but I also went through the property channels a couple of years ago. I got the temporary use permit, which allows use of special events like this. And when I first bought that property, there were young kids spinning donuts, raising dust, and causing shit, and back and forth all through the field. So believe me, it's we've done a hell of a lot for that property. So the big change is we've beautified and we've improved the neighborhood more than we've taken away from it.
Thank you, Chuck. And Councilor Thompson.
Yes, Chuck, when do you anticipate starting?
The equipment's on order, so believe me, I'm going ahead, and I've spent $100,000 already on equipment and gear and everything else. So hopefully we get approval from you guys for this, but I'm hoping the end of June or possibly Canada Day weekend, depending on manufacturing time. And I also, I'm working with all the movie studios to get, to be able to allow me to broadcast movies there, because they do protect the theater, and that's another thing I want to address with the theater. I've been in contact with them, and they're 100% supportive of my project. So there's no conflict of interest there. They go after the older people who, with some of their movies, we're going after families, and we want it to be a family event.
All right, thank you very much. And I don't see any further hands up there. We will be addressing this further on today in the agenda. So again, thank you very much for appearing in person, and Council will revisit this later on.
Okay, and a quick question. Do you have any idea when you guys will decide one way or another?
I believe that we'll decide in the meeting today.
Oh, okay, awesome. Okay, I'll watch for an email, and you guys stay safe, and we'll talk to you and see you guys at the movies.
Thanks, Chuck.
Thanks.
All right, Council, moving on to the next item. It's the request from, it looks like Discover Grand Forks, DBA, and the Chamber, together with some specific merchants, are asking us to consider a pedestrian-only activity on Market Street. And so if they're here, we will hear from them. Sarah and Amber.
And they're both muted.
You're both muted.
I'm unmuted now.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
Hello. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
All right, so the floor is yours. This is not a new subject for council, and so if we just wade right into it, give us your thoughts.
All right. So I'm here representing the Chamber on behalf of a few of our stakeholders, including the downtown business community and Discover Grand Forks. Today, we would like to ask council we want to plan to move forward in developing a pedestrian-only order for Market Ave between 2nd and 4th Street. We sent a letter attached with many signatures from businesses located along 2nd and 4th. And today we're just coming to you asking if we could move ahead in our planning.
Okay, Council, Councilor Thompson, you're on.
Or works. Is this like a test run that you're proposing for that period of time?
We would like to do it as a test run, and it also makes sense given the current situation with COVID. Many districts are doing this because it allows for additional seating for restaurants, additional space for businesses. They're saying that it's just safer to be outside, so we would like to give our businesses the opportunity to try it out this summer. We're not asking for anything more than between June 1st to September 30th this year. And we just want an opportunity to plan it.
No, and I hear that. My only comment is I have read concerns, because this is public, about people with health issues that, may find it difficult walking and they prefer to drive and be able to park. So is that anything that you've given consideration to?
That's something that's definitely on the consideration list. So accessible parking, we want to work with emergency services. We want to work with all the businesses, make sure everything's going to, give them enough space for what they need. But yeah, accessible parking is definitely on the list.
Thank you. And before we go to Councilor Moslin, clearly there's going to be a heavy involvement of our staff in the planning of this. And so I think we need to look at city resources as we consider this matter. To make it work for them, I think that the city is going to have to put in a fair amount of energy to make the plan come together. Councilor Moslin.
Yes, thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Sarah and Amber, for the presentation and bringing forward the idea of a pedestrian-only mall once again. I do recall Roger Brooks's advice on the topic last spring. He said, don't do it until you need to. Until there's, so many pedestrians on the street that it's impossible for cars to move, don't go there. I really see, there is a need for the downtown to adapt in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Somehow we have to make people feel safe when they are in the downtown core, and they have to be able to socially distance. I am in full support of taking a look at the downtown core in order to make social distancing possible, and in order to make people feel safe when they patronize the restaurants and the stores. If that means bringing the restaurants and the stores onto the street or across the sidewalk, so be it. I am concerned, though, that I do not see a need to make it pedestrian only. There is tons of room there. So before I could support a pedestrian-only mall, I would need to see a couple schematics. One, what would be the minimum COVID response in order to make those businesses viable? That is, in order to make their customers feel safe. I'd like to see those schematics, and the mayor is quite correct that this would take up some staff time. But it is important planning. And perhaps the second schematic I would like to see is, okay, so what does a pedestrian mall there look like? What would be the new parameters for restaurants and businesses? And what part would have to still be able to be drained, snow removal, etc. So that is, we're talking about redoing our downtown, which I was kind of supportive of it anyways. The COVID-19 has added a whole new dimension to it, though. That's very un-Roger Brooks. I don't know, I've checked on Roger Brooks' website, and basically he says buy an RV and go camping, which I didn't find very helpful. Anyhow, but I support the rethink. I support maybe some staff time going to this as we look at the schematics to make our businesses and our customers feel safe in the downtown core. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moslin, for reinforcing the fact that this is a demand on staff that is considerable, not to underestimate the amount of energy that might be needed from our staff resources. Councillor Korolek.
Morning. Amber, how would you set up your store to facilitate the closing of the street, would you be tenting out there? What? How will that work?
Hi, thank you. So, for me, this isn't something that I would move my store onto the street. I'm advocating for this to help out the restaurants, the cafes, and those businesses that need the extra space. In order to keep our downtown vibrant, we need to support the restaurants and the cafes, and we need to get them through this. Because if they're not able to survive this, our downtown will become deserted. So for me, the outside of my store probably looks like the expanding of patio space for the wooden spoon, more walkable area for pedestrians. So this isn't for the benefit specifically for my store. I will benefit if all the other businesses downtown benefit, right? We need to come together and find solutions to keep our community going. And it's not always about a direct benefit for me. A lot of times I advocate for businesses so that we can be healthy as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Just one more note. In Europe, in many of the cities there, they have a huge plaza and there's stores such as yours and restaurants all over. And they all seem to benefit because there's people around. And I think it's an important way of looking at things. I think it's a good idea and it's worth a try. You can't lose by trying. So good luck.
Thank you, Councilor Korolek. Councilor Stoodley.
Yes, has there been given any thought, or what do businesses think about those that want the extra space? They could open up, those parking spaces and turn those into, if they're a restaurant, they could turn that into seating, what have you. And those that don't feel appropriate for the business, they can keep it parking. Has there been given any thoughts to that?
I think right now what we're asking for is approval so that we can start that planning process to see how that looks. Without council being in favor of this, we can't move forward. We need to be able to discuss this, put some time and energy into it, knowing that it could be a possibility going forward. I think we need to look at all sorts of options. Maybe a fire lane goes through the middle of the market. We can have reduced speed for handicap parking, loading, unloading zones. Potentially, the round planters that the city has right now could be used to barricade some sections to make sure that there's safety for pedestrians. What we're asking for is the opportunity to look at how this would work for all the businesses and for all of our customers. So we need to do quite a bit of planning. That's why we're going to today.
Thank you, Amber. And Councilor Thompson had another question. I think at this point we need to clarify the fact we're throwing in a fair amount of detail, but what we're looking for here is an overall plan, as Amber made clear. And so getting too much into the details today is probably not going to move us forward. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you. This is only for a trial period, a test run to see how it works. And we're not going to know that until we have that test run. So I certainly will be supporting this project. I think it's a good idea. Kudos to you guys for coming up with that. Thank you.
Councilor Stoodley, you have your hand up? Nope. Okay, I think at this point in time, we've covered enough ground here to give you the message that there is support from council. We'll have a more formal motion on this further on in the agenda. But again, it's clear, I think, that council is indicating a fairly high level of support for taking a closer look at this and some of the implications for revitalizing the downtown. So thank you, Amber, and thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Okay, how are we doing, council? Hopefully this won't be an 8-hour day. The next item of business is the council reports, and we'll include in that the verbal report from the RDKB. So do you want to start with that, Councilor Korolek, and we'll move around the screen here. So both your reports here, if you want to combine them.
Okay, first of all, I'll start with my council report. Not a lot to report. I did go up to Moto and walk around with Councilor Moslin as well as the CAO and Bud Alcock. Bud's done a tremendous amount of work up there, he's there every day. It was an interesting experience, and for me it was very enlightening. I had never been up there, and other than just passing by. So it was interesting, and I'm looking forward to the CAO's suggestions and see where we can go in moving forward with this situation we have. And that's pretty much it. I've been happy to see that the rivers have dropped, as my walkabout every day goes to show. And it will be nice to be able to see our downtown come to life a little. And I look forward to that as well. I'm sure there's something else that I don't remember right now. Secondly, for RDKB, that was the shortest meeting ever. We didn't even go an hour. So we just talked about some various policy bylaws and where we're going with COVID, a bit of update on the flood situation. And we've done that through City Council as well. So really I don't have much to report, nothing to report on that either. New meeting on Thursday, so we'll see what goes from there. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Krog. Councilor Krog, you're muted. You're back to muted. You must have.
You're muted, Neil.
To unmute myself. Is that me?
Yeah.
Okay, no, nothing at this time.
Those tremors, you keep turning it off and on. Councilor Moslin.
Thanks, Mayor. If I'm up here, I do have the written report I wish to comment on. As you just give me a second here, maybe I could find that screen. We as council I'm sure we've all experienced and continue to experience these Zoom meetings, and a lot more people are doing that. It's a great way to meet, but it is exhausting, and it sometimes has good results in terms of efficiency. Anyhow, I have some I'd like to just briefly report on. As written in my submission, there was a May 13th Social Services Advisory Group. As council will have read it. Bob Hughes was there from Ask Wellness. The various social services, other social services did make a report. Okay, those minutes have been done and will become public. The meeting itself was public in the sense that it was recorded by city, thanks staff, and later posted, thanks Les, on YouTube. Council did did ask for the social services advice at that meeting, and the social services did come up with a motion to send back to council on that, and that is within my report. Move that the social services recommend that the city of Grand Forks support the work of its provincial and community partners to find a designated area for the vulnerable population during the COVID-19 emergency. Okay, so that's their advice came back in the form of a motion. The discussion is just as important sometimes as the advice, in terms that you get to see what the different stakeholders have to say. The May 14th Recreation Committee meeting was interesting. I guess for city, what's really one of the highlights for me is that little pump house might finally disappear this summer. The one that's been in the parking lot, empty for 40 years, a long time. Anyways, also coming from that recreation meeting was a May 22nd special meeting of that recreation committee, because it is felt that at the end of the pandemic, as people are become outside more, that there's going to be needing to rethink recreational opportunities. Just like Mr. Varabioff is trying to rethink family entertainment, there's going to have to be some thought given to what are we going to do for people if they can't come to a facility and if they can't congregate in large numbers at an event. Some of the ideas that were suggested was walk a senior, because that population is especially vulnerable and probably has taken had a huge impact in terms of self-isolation on them. Outdoor bingo was another one. Our Frisbee golf course is soon to come online, I hope, Your Worship. And that will be a good one for families through the COVID reality faces us. Speaking of COVID, on May 14th and then again on May 21st, I attended these weekly meetings about that are hosted by BC Housing and basically involve BC Housing and other NPOs who serve the so-called vulnerable population in our community. There has been a lot of outreach to the vulnerable population, okay, through this COVID response. Additional staffing has been charged, motel rooms have been let, especially for streams 3 and 2. This keeps, this group, our clientele's within that, members within that group, self-isolated in the motel rooms. And so far, the need has been 0. That's interesting to know. On a side note, Anchors is now supplying camp showers, which are basically, as you understand, black bladders. So in order to help with cleanliness and to those people in camps. Now, it's not just Moto, but other camps as well. On May 15th, I met with Bob Hughes and walked around City Park. And I guess this is the thing that's Ask Wellness is here. They stepped into a breach, but they're not here long. So that's certainly something we have to consider. May 19th was a tour with Bud, which was quite instructive. And I want to thank Bud for his service over a long time to our community, to our whole community. Because not only is he a security contractor, he's a hard-working volunteer too. And I look forward to more discussions about Moto as Council tries to resolve this challenge. We do have to do something. I certainly agree with that. And I'm looking forward to more discussion on that. Anyhow, that's my report, Your Worship. If it's in order, I'll try to take questions. If not, we can wait for the rest of the councillors to complete their reports. Thank you.
Then you have a place on the agenda next under B, basically. So are you expecting to cover more of that?
Yeah, I'm not sure how this agenda thing is working out, Mayor. Nor is my intent, if other councillors want to move those items or whatever, they are on the agenda. Those motions are basically from me to staff, in order to put something in print ahead of the meeting. Anyhow, but my intent is to speak to those, if not move them.
Okay, and so we'll leave that to item B on the agenda and move on to Councillor Thompson's report.
I also attended the the SAG meeting. And I had intended to listen in on the webinar on reopening local government. Unfortunately, I missed it, but I will be able to hear it because it's on, it's been shared. So that's my intention. And other than that, I have nothing else to report.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Stoodley?
Hey, yes, just a short anecdote. On, I believe it was Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, a lavender plant got swiped from my shop. And so that's kind of, you know, you don't think too much about it. And then on Friday, the lavender plant just magically appeared. It turns out it was our local RCMP. We didn't report it to them or anything, but they somehow found out about it and were able to find that lavender plant. I'm not sure if they came across it on their travels or how they did it, but that returned. So just thumbs up to the RCMP. You know, just shows that they actually are out there. They are keeping an eye out for everybody.
All right, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zielinski.
It was nice to know from Councilor Zach there that the lavender didn't turn into mint all of a sudden. So I'm glad he got his same lavender back. But no, nothing from me at this time.
Okay, Council, can I have a motion to accept Council reports? Councilor Korolek, Councilor Stoodley, all those in favor. And moving on next to the COVID response extreme weather shelter question, Councilor Moslin has the floor.
Thanks, Your Worship. Here we have basically three motions that we probably should deal with ad seriatim, one at a time. Basically, as I pointed out in my report, Ask Wellness is here till the end of June, and has organized and participated in the outreach to this population. There's no clear indication that this COVID pandemic or the new norms that go with it are going to be out of place by June, the end of June. Anyhow, I don't know. I guess the first motion is that we just ask Boundary Family Services and other not qualified nonprofit operators regarding the possibility for extending the COVID-19.
That's motion number one.
Yeah, and I'm not even moving it, Your Worship. As Council knows that, I've tried to make plain that we need to encourage Boundary Family Support Services as they move forward for planning for next year. That the COVID thing was unexpected, has interrupted their plans and planning, and maybe their priorities. The second motion there, that Council directs staff to request a full report including statistics on the Safe Stay Shelter program for I certainly support looking for numbers. Boy, I tried my very best with the Social Services Advisory Group to provide Council with a PIT count, to bring some of those statistics to bear in our community. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But I'm certainly, I would like to know. I do want to also point out to Council, though, that Boundary Family Support Services did attend the Social Services Advisory Group meetings in January, February, March. And in each meeting, they did provide a report. At most meetings, they reported that there is an average of 9 people per night. There's not much more detail than that. But they also described, the fact that they held a meeting, that they checked it out with the neighborhood, that there's no complaints, that sort of thing. So there was a full reporting, not full, at least not in terms of statistics, by Boundary Family Support Services. I do look forward to, I would like to know though, a little bit more about the 9 per night. Was that the same 9 people every night? How many people total people were served? What was the disposition of those people as they left the shelter? We cross a fine line there between privacy and the social service agency revealing names or ages or whatever of private individuals. Nonetheless, it would be really helpful, I do agree, if we got some numbers about that clientele. How many, male, female, age, whatever sort of number we can glean. And I guess the third motion there, it really, at the February social services meeting, Boundary Family Support Services did indicate that they were going to come up with an emergency weather response plan and be the provider for a winter emergency weather shelter, extreme weather shelter, pardon me, which was at the time a great relief to council, because then that sort of thing would be off our plate in terms of having to come up with an extreme weather response plan, and that that agency would take on that work. Now, however, I'm not so sure of their intentions. Anyhow, so, Your Worship, rather than me putting a motion on the floor, would it be appropriate to ask council for questions and advice on this and see how that goes?
I think you've spoken well to all three motions, but in order to this not loop itself to death, I would suggest that we do address this one motion at a time, Councillor, and get them on the floor so that then open it for full discussion at that point. I'd like to see motion number 1, which you've adequately put together, seconded by someone and moved by you.
Okay, Your Worship, on your direction then, I will move that. Council asks Boundary Family Services and other qualified nonprofit operators regarding the possibility of extending the COVID-19 pandemic support services for the vulnerable population from July 1st to the end of September 2020. As of speaking very briefly, my intent is that it would basically, my understanding is that staff would then write a letter to Social Services Advisory Group asking the question, and that it would not be a huge amount of work to find out what their intentions are. Anyhow, I speak to that.
I will second that motion.
Okay, so this is motion number 1, but you've kind of rolled into it the intentions of Boundary Family Services, which is motion number 3. So just on the basis that there is going to be a gap here, that this is not looking like it's going to be over by July, and that we do need to seriously look at the coverage the community has, I think it stands well as a motion. Seconded by Councillor Thompson, and I'll open that up. Councillor Krog speaks first.
Yeah, it may not be over, but it may be over. And to go from July all the way to September when we don't even know what's happening and the economy is reopening. So, no, I don't support the motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Zielinski?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe we have this covered. If we look back at our minutes from our last meeting, that council supports BC Housing and Ask Wellness in identifying hotel rooms or commercial RV sites for isolation purposes. Done deal in my book.
But I think the question is, nobody would be there to manage that or direct that if Ask Wellness, as Councillor Moslin pointed out, is not going to be here through that term past June, the end of June. And Councillor Krog, back to you.
Sorry, I was muted again. Yeah, I'm just gonna, it was answered, so I'll lower.
Councillor Thompson.
regardless of what we feel personally, we need support for these people in the event that the virus does continue. And I don't have issue with asking. We're only asking a question. If the answer comes back no, then we'll have to rethink. I don't know what other qualified nonprofit operators, who that would include. But just, in my opinion, burying our heads in the sand over this particular issue is not benefiting anybody. It's here, we need to deal with it. It's been mandated by the province that it's the municipality's responsibility. And so I'm quite prepared to step up to the plate and do what I can as a councillor to basically protect our town.
Okay, and I won't go immediately to Councillor Krog if there's someone else that wants to respond here, since you've spoken twice already, Councillor Krog. I don't see oh yes, Councillor Moslin, then we'll go back to Councillor Krog. Muted. So you're muted.
Sorry, Mayor, just to distinguish between motion 1 and motion 3, they are two different things. Motion 1 is for the COVID response. Motion 3 is for the extreme weather shelter, which is far ahead, but does take some pre-planning, that's for sure. So, some clarification there. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Krog?
Yeah, if the motion was looking at, we're not looking for anything, but is there NPO or somebody who could do it if the COVID crisis continues past June 31st? So why are we putting in our own timelines that it's July to September? I think it's already covered. I think everybody is aware, even them, about the COVID situation. So why are we asking for support for something we don't know is going to happen? If you said we're looking for support in case this continues past July 1st or whatever, then that makes it a little bit more acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Moslin, he does, sorry, leg cramp. He does make a point that, in fact, you're restricting time frame there might be worth opening up in the sense that should we require it even past September. So do you have any intention that you could maybe manipulate that the time frames to open them up?
Your Worship, if I could see if it would make a difference for council's comfort, I would certainly just remove it. That council ask Boundary Family Support Services and other qualified nonprofit operators regarding the possibility for extending the COVID-19 pandemic support services. Period.
Councillor Krog, would that make it more?
No, if the situation continues.
But would that not be understood in terms of that?
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Sorry, Mayor, the word possibility is still there.
Right. Yeah, I think it's redundant to change. I think it's nice and simple the way it's changed. And Councillor Thompson, could you agree to that change in the motion?
Yeah, I would say in the event that the pandemic continues. I mean, I want this resolution to move forward, but I also understand and can hear the concerns of Councillor Krog. So if we said the council asks Boundary Family Services and other qualified NPOs regarding the possibility for extending the COVID-19 pandemic support services in the event that the that the pandemic continues.
The services is required, yeah.
Yeah, Your Worship, I wouldn't have any problem with that. I did tell you, sort of indicate at the beginning, we were gonna need a roundabout anyhow.
No, I think we're getting there quicker by getting these motions out in front of council and then banging them around. But and I would ask Kevin, did you get that motion, Kevin?
Yes, sir. What we've got is that council asked Boundary Family Services and other qualified nonprofit operators regarding the possibility for extending the COVID-19 pandemic support services in the event the pandemic continues.
Comfortable with that, council?
No.
All right. Can we call for a motion on this matter? All those in favor?
Oh, just a minute.
There's still people waiting to talk.
Yeah, it'd be nice.
Sorry, I wasn't looking over there. And go to Councilor Zielinski.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm just wondering why our original motion, what's wrong with that? There's no timelines in it, other than identifying Boundary Family Services.
I thought there was.
Yeah, it just supports that these people find, or the NPOs, find a site for any COVID-related issues. The council supports BC Housing and Ask Wellness in identifying hotel rooms or commercial RV sites for isolation purposes. So other than mentioning Boundary Family Services and COVID specifically, the door is wide open for any NPO to come in and work with the other nonprofits to get it done. So.
I'm sorry, but I'm reading the motion, the original motion, as having different wording.
Yeah, and what I'm reading is the one that's actually passed right now that we supported last regular meeting.
Okay, agreed.
Can that be read again, please?
Okay, I'll even start with the whereas. Whereas in response to the short-term COVID-19 pandemic and the current provincial orders regarding the municipal support for initiatives involving the vulnerable population, Council resolves the following. The Council supports BC Housing and Ask Wellness in identifying hotel rooms or commercial RV sites for isolation purposes. Again, I thought that's saying the same thing, so I'll go ahead.
I don't think, in fact, it does. I think it's very specific about accommodation. The service itself that we're talking about extending has far more complexity to it than simply finding those accommodations. Councillor Moslin, it's your motion.
Yes, Your Worship, I do agree that there is some overlap, but there is some important points, differences which you have just pointed out. One, it directly addresses Boundary Family Support Services and their leadership role in the community. And two, it also it is not just centered around accommodations. It's it's a variety of services. In fact, right now, most of the services that are going out to the vulnerable population is out in the form of outreach. As the extra accommodations that have been booked are still empty because there has not been anybody in them. There has not been the need for them, thank goodness. But they're still sitting there empty in case, which adds to the safety of the community. So that's the major differences I see in the two motions. I do appreciate council support in the previous motion, and I look forward to council support in this one. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Krog and then Councillor Thompson.
I agree the two motions are a little bit different. One is outreach and the other is to deal with the streams for isolation. Now, my question is, why is the city asking NPOs and anybody to do that? Like, why are we involved again? Why are we the ones asking? BC Housing, Ask Wellness. If you think about it, this is a motion that should be coming from SAG. and it's like, we're the only ones that ever get a recommendation. The SAG committee recommends to the city. Well, the SAG committee can recommend to FIS or other qualified NPOs or BC Housing to deliver the service if the blah, blah, blah. So I'm still baffled as to how we keep getting sucked back into this.
Okay, and Councillor, I think that's clear, and Councillor Thompson is.
Just a couple of things. The original motion that was passed last meeting specifies BC Housing and Ask Wellness. And this motion is going to Boundary Family Services and other qualified NPOs. So I see that there's a difference there. With respect to what Councillor Krog just said, and it goes back to something I said earlier, the municipalities have been mandated by the province to deal with the issue. Like it or don't like it, that's the way it is.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Zielinski.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for their input and so that I could see the error in my ways. Thank you very much. So just before we do move it forward, I'd like it reread, or it sure be nice if we had a written version in front of us. But yeah, just redo the motion for me, please.
Okay, and I'll hold off on that a bit. We've got Councillor Moslin, and then maybe we could reread it at that point. He's the only other hand up. Councillor Moslin.
Yeah, on a couple points to Councillor Krog. First, Councillor, the Social Services Advisory Group does give advice to each other. That's an important part of the business at the table. As when they hear each other give reports, and they hear, that's the only place in the whole community they find the ability to give each other advice. That's the primary purpose of the table. Is not to just give city council advice. And the second point is, Councillor, you got a recommendation today at today's meeting because council asked the Social Services Advisory Group for that recommendation. So please, not all advice comes just to the city council. Those agencies are benefiting from hearing each other and giving each other advice, even if it's not as formal as motions, because they're not addressing a body like council. Anyhow, those are my points. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, and Councillor Krog.
Yeah, FIS is sitting at the table.
Your previous argument, you're on.
Yeah, FIS is sitting at the table. NPOs are sitting at the table already, at the SAG table. So you look to your right and say, hey, can you guys provide outreach services? No, we're not gonna, it's gonna come to council and then back to blah, blah, blah. They're all sitting at the same table.
Okay.
And I don't support it.
Thank you, Councillor. And the motion is on the table and ask for a rereading from Kevin.
That council asks Boundary Family Services and other qualified nonprofit operators regarding the possibility for extending the COVID-19 pandemic support services in the event the pandemic continues.
Thank you, Kevin. And can I call for the motion? All those in favor and opposed? You wish your vote recorded. Those in opposition, I see Councillor Zielinski, Krog, and Stoodley. 3 negatives.
Yeah, I was included for that.
Carries. Councillor Moslin, moving to motion number 2, the council directs staff to request a full report from the Safe Stay Shelter program run in 2019. And I see
Your Worship, I would defer to Councillor Zielinski, because it was basically Councillor Zielinski, this was his initial request. And I certainly support it, Your Worship. I would seek that if I do move it, that maybe Councillor Zielinski could second it. I don't know, been speaking to
Your Mayor, I'm sorry, maybe I should just stop talking and move it.
Okay,
Would that help, Mayor?
yeah, let's do that.
Okay, that move that council directs staff to support a full report, including statistics on the Safe Stay Shelter Program from Boundary Family Services. Thanks, Your Worship.
Councilor Zielinski, do you wish to second that? You're muted.
Yes, to get it on the table, I'll second.
Okay, and then let's open it up then, Councilor Zielinski, then Councilor Krog.
I'll defer to Councilor Krog first.
Councilor Krog.
Okay, yes, I totally agree with the report. It was, Councilor Moslin used a weird term, staff support a report. It should be staff request a report on behalf of council or whatever. But yeah, we want numbers, we want anything that doesn't have anything to do with privacy. So ages, sex, that type of thing. And I also want to know about incidents. How many, like it's a year-end review or a year-end report. So this is what they do, they lay it out, this is how many people. We had 2 incidents that required us to call the RCMP, 2 incidents that were handled in-house. We had this many guests, some were different, blah, blah, blah. So a full report before you even think about asking them to prep for next year. Without a report, there's no point.
Thank you, Councilor. And Councilor Zielinski, you want to pick up on that?
Kev, did you get that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to the added, or as Councilor Moslin said, I had brought it up last meeting, and so my take is dealing with this as we do with any other service. Yes, the service is needed in our community. Tell us about it. Tell us what worked, what didn't work, and so that we can either improve on the service or find out whether it was needed in the community or not. So it's just a basic housekeeping, whether this is the library, whether it's Gallery 2, any other service in our community. I think I think council should be abreast of it if we're supporting someone. So that's where I'm coming from.
All right, thank you. And can I clarify how you define them as a service that we're providing from the city? I think that our attempts here, if I understand council, has been to keep a bit of an arm's length distance between us and the responsibility of service. So I'm thinking we need to be cautious in terms of how we place this in front of them, that this is a request, but I don't get your argument for them being like the library or the museum or any other service.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me to explain that. We had a group come to us to say, hey, this is a needed service in your community. Whether it's a shelter, whether it's a movie theater, whether it's a community kitchen, those things don't fall into our zoning bylaw right now. So someone last winter, December, came to us to say, hey, this doesn't fit your zoning, but please, it's a needed service for our community. And we bent the rules for them. And I think it's only fitting that if they ask to say, hey, we want this service that isn't in your bylaws, in your community, that a report back to council to say, here, this is how the service ran in your community. I think that's only fitting, I guess, or just a professional courtesy to do that. So that's how I see it as a service. If there was learnings, and I think I had said I haven't heard any complaints. So not knowing where this is going to go this winter, if there's learnings on how to do it correctly in our community, I think we should document them, because the issue is going to come up again. So let's find out what worked, what didn't work, and again, Mr. Mayor, like you said, what our real role is in all this, I don't know, but I know someone came to me last winter to say, break your rules because this service is needed, and a report back I think is just logical. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor. That's very clear. And Councillor Korolek.
I agree everything you do has a debriefing, and all this stuff with the vulnerable population and emergency housing, whatever it is, it always seems to come back to council for recommendations or suggestions or whatever the case may be, whether it's doing, stepping outside our bylaws, whatever it is, it comes to us. So I think we should see a final report. I mean, to me, it only makes sense. How do you want support in doing something if you're not willing to provide the statistics needed? That's important to me to know that with everybody else here, that how many people were there and what went, you don't want to violate any privacy, but you still need those statistics to even support something moving forward in the future. Because it will come back to us, and somebody will be asking for something. But if we don't have anything to back up the request, then how does anybody expect us to say, yeah, you got our support, whatever it is? Right now, we need to have that information, so that's where I am on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, and Councillor Thompson, trying to wrap it up here, I think we can get to a decision here fairly quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. Boundary Family Services was asked at the last SAG meeting about the information that we are requesting today, and it was confidential and not able to be released publicly. Hence, we need to pass this resolution.
Through your worship.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, through your worship, just if there are specific things you'd like to see in the report, I would ask that you amend your resolution to include them. So Councillor Krog mentioned a number of things. If there are, overall, we can request the report that they're going to provide to their board, but if there's something you need to see or council feels they need to see, we'd ask for an amendment.
Okay, and I was figuring that a full report would give some options there in terms of your request from Boundary Family, but I hear male, female, whatever information basically that would not be of the nature of confidential, that would identify people and specific people, but number of meals that were provided. I know that it was only meals for people who were there on the premises, I understand. Incidents, yeah, I think some of those we could get hold of. Councillor, what were some of the other things that we threw out in this discussion just now?
I have some notes, just to cover it off maybe quicker. We had age, sex of attendees, incidents, number of guests, and repeat customers. And now I have number of meals.
Councillor Krog?
Yeah, one other thing could be like the notes at the bottom of any report. This is what worked, this is what didn't. In the future, this is supposed, or this would be the most likely avenue. So a summary of their experience, like everything ran smooth or didn't, or I changed this or I changed that or whatever.
Gotcha. Councillor Zielinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add to that last known residents, whether it's just people getting kicked out of Christina Lake that use the services, or whether it was actual local people that are here year-round.
Okay, I don't know how that's going to go, but throw that into the mix.
Okay.
Understanding where people are going or coming from is probably an essential demographic.
Yeah, I mean, it is often an essential demographic in most statistics gathered on this population. I don't know, I really don't know what a full report would mean, or including statistics. The questions that council have raised are very good, including the one of origin. I think that's what Councillor Zielinski was saying. That is important. It would be valuable to get. I hope we can get it if this motion goes forward. Thank you.
All right, Chris, a vote on this motion.
Do you need a vendors? You need seconds.
Just what about age? Is that included in the?
Yes.
Okay, so did we have that put up on the screen so that we can all read it before we vote on it, please?
We haven't amended it yet, so.
That list hasn't been worded into the resolution.
Yeah, but we want to include it in there. So Kevin will have to write it, but I have a list here, so we could just build off of that. He won't be able to put it up just yet. I don't think you have it. Okay? So Kevin will go with age, including age, sex, number of incidents, number of guests, repeat customers, clients, what worked, what didn't work, best practices, number of meals, summary of the experience, and last known residence or origin. And we'll tweak it a little bit and make it a little nicer, but you see Councilor Krog.
Yeah, can we change sex to gender?
Sure, gender.
And the origin of gas is, what we're trying to do is find out if they are local or if they are now local because they moved here or whatever. Origin of gas could be moto. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So it needs to be somehow phrased better, I guess.
Okay, I think we have the intent. I think we can work with that.
Okay, I certainly accept some of what Councilor Zielinski is saying in terms of our right to ask here, but I am suggesting that we are polite in terms of this being a request and not a demand. But I'm assuming that Duncan, your social skills would enable that well.
I hope so. We'll be okay.
Okay.
Could we just get the mover and the seconder to approve that? And
Councilor Zielinski is seconding it. That was a motion by Councilor Moslin. All those in favor? Opposed? And the motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item is Councilor Stoodley on film industry economics and
Sorry, Mayor.
There's one more resolution,
There's
Mr. Mayor.
one more motion in there.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, Councilor Moslin.
You know, Mayor, I wonder if it's redundant, because really, in the passing of the previous motion, we've directed staff to go and work with, to gather a full report to bring to council.
Right.
Really, one would imagine that in that full, gathering that report, they're going to be inquiring what the intentions of Boundary Family Support Services would be for the winter, for the following winter. I don't know.
Right. I have some difficulty with the word similar extreme weather. I'm hoping that we can have a creative approach this year and that we may not have a desire or a need to have a similar program, that there may be other alternatives that we could manage before the winter.
Okay, Your Worship. Can I take your advice then? Or I'll take your advice. Personally, I'd rather just leave that motion sitting there and not move it. Because my understanding is that staff is now going to go back and from the previous motion and have a very thorough discussion with Boundary Family Support Services. I don't. It's up to you, Your Worship.
I'm listening to you, and I agree. I think at this point that we know that Boundary Family is also moving towards some workshopping on their own to look at the future of their service, and that's coming up fairly quickly now. And so I think this may be pushing too far with that specific motion number 3. So can we just leave it alone at this point for today and not decide on it? Council?
No, I just have one thing I want to say is I wouldn't put, when we do discuss this again, take similar out, because extreme weather can also include heat.
Yeah.
So, let's think about this more before we actually deal with it.
And Councilor Krog?
Yeah, I agree to wait. We should be waiting on that. One thing that's missing from all of the preparation for winter or extreme weather, and we're all prepared, oh, what's gonna happen in the winter? You know, the only people that aren't preparing are the ones that are gonna use this service. It's not even summer yet, so it's just like, what are you gonna do to make sure you don't freeze to death this winter? What step are you gonna take? Anything. So we're all trying to figure out what we're gonna do in case. Well, if they took even a little bit of stuff, then they wouldn't even worry about winter. But they don't.
For a very consistent message. We're leaving that on the table then and moving on to item number C then, which is Councilor Stoodley on the film industry, the economics and the potential here. Councilor?
Yes, at this point, I'd still have to leave that for the upcoming in camera, if that's okay, just because it does touch on potential land use.
Okay, any objection to that from council? There is no report here from Councilor Stoodley. None, seeing none, we'll move on. And next item of business is decisions around our delegations today. So dealing with them in order, can we first deal with crafting a motion in terms of Mr. Varabioff's outside plans for his property and the drive-in movie concept?
So through your worship, some context, please, if I may.
Yes, please.
So the last time the TAUP was issued for this property, although written somewhat vague, the notice that went to the residents was regarding a temporary use around the Cannabis. It was occasional. We're moving now more into a commercial regular use, and staff believe this would require a new TUP, which has a public process that goes along with it. So the decision point today is whether you want to engage in that TUP and direct staff to move forward with that temporary use permit for a drive-in movie theater.
And can I see that in a motion from a councillor? Councillor Thompson, second Councillor Korolek. So basically moving forward with the process here of temporary use permit as a new request.
Correct.
Council, move to discussion, Councillor Moslin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, so in other words, there is an essence of time here for Mr. Varabioff, and the temporary use permit, I think does involve a public hearing. Is that correct or not?
So through your worship, it involves public notification. Is it a public hearing? So Dolores, if you want to come up and talk about the process.
And then Mr. Varabioff had given us some time frames. He wasn't expecting to be operational before what date? I don't recall what he said.
I think he said
Canada Day?
He wants to start at the end of June.
Okay, so that gives us a month we're working with here.
Yeah, and I think I'll just take a step back before we get into the process, but the reason the TUP is in existence, I guess, through the Local Government Act is essentially it doesn't fit anywhere, and you're now changing a use where a neighborhood may, live next to a residential zoned land, and now you're changing that use to something that wasn't expected. So the idea is you're going to give them some form of notification, some form of opportunity to provide feedback before the use takes place. I mean, that's essentially the intent. And we talked about the process.
Yeah, so we went for a full temporary use permit process. It's advertised twice in the paper plus a public hearing. And I think what we've been discussing is that the temporary use permit does allow for temporary and occasional special events. But the intent at the time wasn't necessarily something like this. So I think it sort of fits the current temporary use permit, but kind of doesn't. So
the recommendation at this time is that you move forward with a new temporary use permit. It's in short, the neighbors provided feedback on a different type of use than this proposed.
I have a question, if I may. What is the timeline on this? Would we be able to meet Chuck's June 30th, July 1st deadline?
It would be tight. We have to hit the paper and we have some legislative requirements. It has to be a minimum of 3 days, a maximum of 10 days, 14 days. And so it's hitting the paper at the right time, hitting the council meetings at the right time. And I think we can do it.
Any further questions from council? So the motion on the floor is that we go ahead with this with the standard procedure. Can I call for the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, and the second issue that we're being asked to address here today is from the groups Discover, Grand Forks, the DDA, and the Chamber, and a number of businesses. Are we ready to go ahead talking about a plan? Councilor Stoodley, you have your hand up, but I don't see a question
Yeah, I'd just like to recuse myself.
there. Okay, all right. So,
Can we, through your worship, can I provide some context on this as well?
please do. Thank you, Doctor.
Sure. So, we're just kind of learning some of the details this morning. Would like to close between 2nd and 4th Market Ave. Would like to move ahead with the planning. June 1st is a week away, and would like to have that area closed for essentially 4 months till the end of September. Something that I think is very important is some planning aspect, if council decides to move forward with this, some planning aspect with emergency services to see what that would look like. And if there are other things that council would like to look at, that could also be mapped out. If council wants to see a plan before approving this, that would happen in 3 weeks at the next council meeting. I think it's 3 weeks away. June 15th is the next council meeting. So really right now, you're kind of looking at 3 options. One is, pre-approve a model where, those streets are closed, provided that we can meet emergency services and meet some of that demand. The second option is pre-approving a model where some lanes are closed. I think Councilor Stoodley had brought up. And the third is you want to see a whole plan at June 15th before you approve anything. And just put that out there right now for some discussion.
Okay, council, those are the 3 options, and I see a waiting list here of Councilor Moslin, Thompson, and Krog. So, Councilor Moslin.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I did speak to this. I really feel that there needs to be 2 plans. First off, there has to be an immediate COVID-19 response plan that for our downtown core. How can we make our downtown core safe? And by making it safe, that will attract customers. So we need that plan. So I'm all in favor of planning and as much as possible with the merchants to do that. If you want, from that, I would like to see a much more detailed plan about any street closures. So if Mr. Varabioff isn't going to get his drive-in theater immediately, I'm afraid turning Market Avenue immediately into a pedestrian mall is not up either. It's going to take a lot of planning. I would like to see first, Your Worship, a much more, if possible, detailed plan for the downtown core to make it socially distance proof. Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councilor, and we are deciding on the planning here, so it's not a decision to do it without a plan, but the question is how deep do we want to go into it? So your suggestions are clear that we need 2 plans, basically, one for the COVID response and one for longer term. Councilor Thompson.
What I would suggest is that while I support the idea, I think that the groups and our staff need to have a meeting and a discussion and come to an agreement on what will and won't work, and then bring forward a recommendation to council at the next meeting. I don't want to get involved in the micromanagement of the process. So if, the groups and staff heard what council had to say, what their concerns were in some cases, and they can take that into consideration when they are having their discussions.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Krog.
Clarification. Is it, they want to start June 1st? Is that correct? And if so, then we should be looking at, I want to see a plan. So that would be at the 15th of June, and then that means that it wouldn't happen till July 1st, which would fit right in. You have a July 1st celebration, and then it just remains after that.
Councilor, and to clarify, we have those three options that Mr. Redfern has put in front of us. So the one option, again, of moving immediately on this with no plan is not the one I see council supporting at this point. And so the motion on the table that I see developing here is that we go ahead with the consultation and planning and bring forward some a plan of whatever stage we can get to by the next regular meeting of council.
Which is the 15th?
I believe it's the 15th, yeah, it's 3 weeks. It's not 3 weeks?
Well, it is, but I can't, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I've reached out to a traffic consultant as well regarding the stop signs and speed zones and all those things. I expect a report back in about 3 to 4 weeks on that once we've finalized doing traffic counts and whatnot here in town. So this is going to take a little time. There is a meeting at the very end of June. Ideally, I'm hoping to have something back to council before that meeting, like by the 15th. But given that expectation of 3 to 4 weeks from today, I just can't see that happen, and that would be falling more into the, I think it's June 29th or so meeting, if I got this right. Which puts it a little tight for July 1st, but it would give us probably a better opinion, more educated proposal.
Yeah, so to pull it back, if council wanted to make a decision on June 15th, we wouldn't be able to tell you the impact that would have on traffic flow in the downtown core. Council was willing to wait till June 29th. We'll have some work done in that area as we were working on that anyway with the proposal around four-way stops in some of the various locations. So really, I guess it's how much information you want to have before you make the decision.
Well, I would think that we'd like to visit it on June 15th and whether or not it's developed further for the next meeting. But let's see if we can put something in front of ourselves by the 15th as complete as possible.
Okay.
Getting a nod on that from council. Yeah. Okay, Councilor Moslin has his hand up.
Thank you, Worship. We heard Amber speak kind of passionately that she's really worried about her restaurants, our restaurants on that core. I would not want anything, my intent, if it's possible at this meeting, would be to give the restaurants specific permission to use the parking spots in front of their establishments if they need to move to patio dining. I would be quite amenable to letting that go right away. It has, it was established pretty much last year. I don't know if there's even been a need for that, but my intent would be to give restaurants and dining establishments immediate relief for outside patio dining if they feel they need that, and just to use their own parking spots. More detailed planning about the downtown core is certainly needed, and I'm quite willing to wait on that. But meanwhile, I do not want to deprive those downtown core restaurants the opportunity to expand patio dining. I'm sorry, Your Worship, I probably didn't clarify anything.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Your Worship. The thing is, this is a trial. And, I appreciate that, that Daniel's got reports on traffic and the like coming. And that can be looked at as well, because it's not, I think, just the downtown market. It's probably the whole downtown. I really think that this needs to be given an opportunity, and I support that we look at it on the 15th and hopefully can make some sort of a determination. I think that's going to give an opportunity for the groups to meet with our staff and for them to prepare a report to come back. And that's what and if it requires a resolution, I'm prepared to make that resolution.
I think we have a resolution on the floor. I'm not sure.
I think so. Kevin, no? No, there's no resolution on the floor.
On the floor. Councillor Korolek is waiting, but I certainly will entertain a motion. Councillor Korolek.
I will support that motion as well. I think it's a trial. I heard that Kelowna is shutting down a street in downtown Kelowna to try the same thing, to accommodate the restaurants. I mean, they're only allowed so many people in. I mean, I think we need to do whatever we can to help our local businesses and help them get back on. Go forward with things this year, because it's going to be a tough thing. And for comfort of all people involved, I think it's important. So yeah, I support a resolution, and I'd like to see it come back on June 15th so we can make some sort of thing. And I understand it's only a trial. If it works, terrific. If it doesn't work, well, we've given it a shot, but we need to go forward and help where we can. It's very important.
Thank you. And Councillor Krog.
Yeah, I would like to see the information that Mr. Drexler will be getting. So I would say June 15th at the earliest, but it could also be the second meeting in June. And if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. If we took, the other thing is, if you just took all the parking away and you left the vehicles to be able to travel through, maybe that's a compromise, but I would say June 15th at the earliest, but it may wait, or it may have to wait till the second meeting in order to actually resolve it, but it can be on the agenda for the 15th.
Councillor Thompson, we're trying to get it to a motion stage here, but...
Well, I did say I would make the motion.
That you did.
And now I forget what I was going to say. Waiting till the 29th to make a decision, I don't believe is going to give enough time, maybe I'm wrong, to get it set up for July the 1st. So I would defer to staff on that for a comment.
So, through your worship, if council, and it sounds like council is interested in seeing a plan at the earliest June 15th, I think the motion could be as simple as directing staff to work with this group to bring back a conceptual design for council to review on the 15th. Taking into account emergency services, etc. It could be as simple as that.
Thompson?
Whatever works.
And I have a seconder already, Councillor Korolek. I saw your hand up. So that's the motion.
I'm going to put words in my mouth.
Yeah. So all I will add, your worship, is I am very certain we will not have that traffic study. We'll still bring forward the plan, and council can decide at that time if they want additional traffic flow information or not.
Okay, and I think the other thing that I'm hearing from council to be reflected in our discussions is the sooner the better, that we're feeling that we don't want to be the foot dragging in terms of getting this to move forward. So some urgency being expressed by council. Can we call for the motion? All those in favor and opposed? I think that's unanimous. We can, Councilor Stoodley can come back. Okay, and on the agenda is future meeting schedules. This is more of an exploratory with council in terms of what things look like moving forward. There are some real advantages to having the daytime meetings. I think we're learning that rather than phone in, that if councilors are not going to be available, that linking them in this way in Zoom is going to be far better in terms of participation if you're not at the meeting. But I'll open it up to how do you think things are going, and how should our schedule reflect any change in thinking that we have? Councilor Stoodley.
Yeah, as long as we're Zooming, it doesn't necessarily matter if it's day or night. Once you're back into chambers, I know people do like it after hours. Those that do have things during the day, they can still make the meetings and have their input during the meetings.
Further? Councilor Thompson.
I really like the Zoom meetings. As long as there's still the COVID out there. I'm a little bit leery of meeting in chambers until I'm comfortable that the COVID is gone. And you know, how are you going to have your distancing with members of council and members of staff and yeah, I think it's difficult, and I kind of like these day meetings. My thought.
Okay, Councilor Korolek and then Councilor Moslin.
I like the convenience of Zoom. I like the fact that if you can't physically make a meeting, the Zoom will be available. So I think that's appropriate and that's very good. I miss the actual physical, I don't know, being in council chambers, that things change so much, and then it's not as though I'm against changing that. I think it's great. I like that I know the availability for meetings, people attending meetings is evening, and we've heard a lot about that in the past. So I think that, you know, Zoom is great, and I think we need to keep that available for those when you can't make a meeting physically. But for convenience, sure, it doesn't matter. I think it's okay one way or the other. We have to do what we have to do to this time.
Okay, and Councilor Moslin, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I echo Councilor Korolek's feelings about Zoom. It is really, there are some good things. The pandemic has actually tipped us into a method or a media that's been around for a while, and now we're taking full advantage of it. Anyhow, Your Worship, I am certainly in favor of more Zoom meetings. I would do not want to deviate though from the calendar. That is, my expectations are that we will continue to hold regular meetings and committee of the whole meetings as published. Those dates will not change. I see really no disadvantage to conducting the meeting in the morning, that is at 10, rather than at 7. The committee of the whole meeting was always in the morning. What I always whined about before was being in council chambers like for 12 hours. You know that?
Yeah.
Your staff is really taking a risk when they're asking us to do that. Anyhow, I'm comfortable with the Zoom meetings. As long as the scheduled dates are kept, I do not mind moving to say 10 o'clock time for regular meetings. Thanks, Worship.
Okay. Council, I'm not going to dwell on this much longer. I don't see any other hands up, and basically we were talking about this so that Mr. Redfern and his team can plan for some of the future here, both in terms of getting back together in council and the times that work best for us in terms of meeting. So certainly daytime meetings are going to save in terms of staff time. The question is from Councilor Moslin, can we stagger things a bit more so that we're not doing a 9 or 10 or 12-hour day, either in person or on Zoom? So, Mr. Redfern, have we kicked this around enough to give you some information?
Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay. And moving down the list here, recommendations for staff decisions. We have the fire service operation and the policy 901. So understanding this is a change of direction or a change of policy. Mr. Red, you want to introduce this?
You bet. George is just on his way up, Your Worship. So, I mean, in short, we had a older policy. This is an update, a little more specific. And I know there were some questions about whether we had spoke with the RD, so I'll kick that over to George.
Sure, yeah. I made contact with James Chandler in the RDKB. At that time, he had no concerns, so he didn't bring anything forward, so nothing at this time.
The only other note we'll make, Your Worship, is the template was adjusted a little based on some comments at the last meeting, and I would just also like to confirm that that information at the top in the header is what Council was looking for.
Okay, and make this motion that Council adopts the revised fire service level policy 901. Can I have someone make that motion? Councilor Korolek, second, Councilor Thompson. And opening for further discussion. I see Councilor Moslin hands up.
Thanks, Your Worship. You know, I certainly support the motion with some reluctance, I guess. I guess it's the what we're dealing with here is a playbook. It's called, referred to as a playbook. I'm sure it's carved in stone somewhere. I wish it wasn't so carved in stone, so that we could put down what skills we would need within our emergency personnel for our local community. If we ever got that latitude, I would certainly like to see something about flood protection. But you know, that's blue sky. So I'm speaking in favor of the motion, Your Worship. Thank you.
Councilor Zielinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a comment on asking outside agencies for their comments. I would hope in the future we'd be a little more formal with, especially when we deal with another municipality. George, not to say that at the operations level, you and the other fire chiefs don't have things figured out. It's just what happens 5 years from now. A formal letter to the RDKB saying we're changing the service, what do you think about it? And let the, go through the board and whatnot and just follow it that way, that we have a paper trail when we change a service or when we ask for comment, that it is a little formalized. That's all my request.
Yeah, and through Your Worship, I don't want to, just so we're clear, as this is a public meeting and it's also available online, we are changing a service as far as how the policy is written, but we haven't engaged in swift water rescue in a significant period of time.
A long time.
It's been a long time, so we're tweaking the policy to reflect our current practice, I think, is...
Other than 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess my comment is whether it's changing a service with an agreement, regardless of whether we did it or not, whether it's the movie theater, whether it's the 4 lots over on 70th. I just prefer being very formal, going out to the public to ask their opinion or ask another stakeholder's opinion, and just having a little more formalized. That's all I'm saying.
Noted. You Council, are you ready for this? Oh, Councilor Thompson, you have a final say here.
Yeah, I don't think when we're dealing with fire rescue policies, we want to go to the public for their opinion on it. But yes, I do agree, you do want the paper trail. However, we did ask if George had, or the fire chief had requested comment from the regional district. He's done that, although be it verbally, but I don't have an issue with that. So I'm prepared to move forward and support the policy.
Thank you, Councilor. And ready for the motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried.
Thanks, George.
Thank you, Councilor.
And thank you, George. The next item of business is the investment policy number 809. And again, I'll acquiesce to Mr. Redfern on this matter.
So through your worship, this was discussed at the last committee of the whole. The only question that came up at that meeting was whether we wanted to move into the realm of investing with A and triple B. Upon further investigation, it was determined that if we were to eliminate those from the policy, it may limit our ability to invest with local banks here in Grand Forks. So answering that question, I haven't seen anything else come up from the last meeting. Juliet, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, that's.
Councilor Zielinski had his hand up there.
No, I just want to thank staff for not only the change of the header for me, but the other things that I requested, and I'll make a motion to move this policy.
And the seconder for that, Councilor Korolek. Further discussion on this. Pretty straightforward and common sense. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Capital budget amendments. Capital budget amendment, City Hall elevator, and this is a sad story. I'll pass it on to Mr. Redfern.
Through your worship, so you have a report in front of you regarding our elevator. This elevator has been out of use since I've been here, and it sounds like for a significant amount of time. If, and I say this, if council wants to continue to have meetings upstairs in this facility, it's recommended that the elevator be fixed. However, there are always moments of opportunity, and if council were considering other locations or hosting meetings in other secure spaces, then it may not be required. So I always say that if, as we get into that.
Okay, we've all read the report, Councilor Thompson and then Councilor Zielinski.
I would put forward a resolution that we approve the expenditure of $77,000 to Cone for the modernization repair of the City Hall elevator to be funded from the capital reserve.
The seconder for that motion is Councilor Krog. Opening up discussion, Councilor Zielinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess this begs the question, since I brought up the what I think is the lack of funding for our facilities. Is the elevator at Gallery 2 ready to go also? Are we planning on the next big expenditure on something like this?
So through your worship, Daniel has a comment on that.
If I may, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So from Gallery 2, we haven't heard any sort of major trouble with the elevator in the past couple of years. This elevator here has been having issues since I started working full-time at the city. In about 2015, 2016, it would go down maybe once or twice a year. It's escalated now to being down for weeks or months at a time, being offline. And when repaired, it's not. So Gallery 2, we haven't heard any of those comments. However, we can look more into it, what the age of that equipment is. I believe there was some modernization done in the early 2000s, but I'm not positive on that.
Yeah, so I'll build off of that, your worship. Something I'm trying to wrap my head around is being new here and leaning on Justin a little bit is the condition of our assets and some of those condition assessments, whether it be paved roads or facilities or utility infrastructure. And I think we have some work to do in that area, and I'm still trying to understand it and asking a lot of questions. But I think we'll be having some discussion in these areas in the near future, and definitely as we get into the next budget on maybe opportunities.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Korolek?
The elevator's been down since February 4th, I know that. It actually escorted downstairs from that day forth. I think our meeting area in our city hall is wonderful. I support getting the funds to fix the elevator. I think it's a necessity. Doesn't matter who it is. I mean, if you have staff that was working upstairs and had a disability, there's no way of getting up and down. The elevator must be fixed. I support that.
Councilor Thompson?
Thank you, Your Worship. That elevator was installed in 1979 and operational in 1980, and I know that because I was working for the city at the time. But it is a necessity for people who have health issues. I'm not just referring to myself or the mayor, but others who have other issues. And so I fully support the repair to the elevator.
Councilor Moslin?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I support the motion. I just have two asides that I'm going to speak about briefly. One is I'm really hopeful that if we're going to get into elevators, then Monday we might liberate the library basement with an elevator. And the second thing, Your Worship, brings it to mind is the allocation of the money from capital reserves. Because in the next motion, Your Worship, I'm going to be pursuing the allocation of special monies to develop 60th. Anyhow, those are my two comments. I do support the motion. Thank you, Your Worship.
All right, so no further hands are up, and looking at this point, it seems like this is a motion to replace the elevator at 76,000. Was that the figure I thought was in the
77,000.
77,000. And all those in favor? Opposed? Looks like unanimous. Next item of business is the number D, and I would ask Kevin to put me in the waiting room. Who is the acting mayor today? You guys don't keep track of that?
I believe it's Councilor Krog.
Councilor?
We'll have that for you in just one moment, sir.
A slight technical difficulty.
Councilor Moslin is the lucky one.
Okay, Councilor Moslin, please take the chair for me, and Kevin, put me in the doghouse.
Wait. 2 minutes, you feel shame.
So just, not yet, Kev.
Yeah.
So, Council, through your worship, through acting chair, we do have the applicant in the waiting room. And so if council by unanimous vote decided you wanted to let that individual answer some questions, we would allow them into the meeting. But for this, at this point, we're going to leave them in the waiting room unless that vote happens.
All right, Council, I assume that we need a motion to that effect, and perhaps move that the petitioner be allowed into the Zoom meeting. Is that what you're looking for, Mr. Redford?
Yes, if council would like to ask them questions. They missed the deadline to sign up as a delegation and participate, so this is solely council's discretion, and I believe our procedural bylaw says unanimous.
Okay, can I have a councillor move that, or? Thank you, Councilor Thompson. Looking for a seconder. Thank you, Councilor Korolek. Any discussion on the motion to let them in? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. The motion to let them in from the waiting room has passed. So go ahead and do that, Kevin, if you can.
it.
Welcome, Mr. Chu, to our meeting. Council is about to discuss the motion and may have some questions that they wish to direct to you. So at this point, I'm going to hand it back to our planning chair and ask Ms. Sheets to bring the motion forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving forward through you, acting chair, I guess it would probably be appropriate to ask Mr. Chu if there's anything he hasn't addressed in the report. So if council has any questions regarding the report, the information that was provided, access with some of that information that was provided, vehicle travel was something else that was asked, and so it would be an appropriate time to ask Mr. Chu to answer those questions.
Okay, I recognize, the chair recognizes Councilor Zielinski.
Thank you very much. Nice that you're here, Mr. Chu. Tell me a bit about this project. It started out as one thing, it's moved to something different, and COVID hit, and who knows what's coming down the road. So can you just tell me what you got going there, please?
So because we planning to do the fish fry, like the fruit, like the apple, whatever before, but the market changing, so we're going to move it to the cannabis business instead of the original business.
Okay, can you tell me what other facilities that you have like this in the Lower Mainland or any other place, or you know, where this model is presently, that we could say, you know, it's very similar to this one, and so we can make learning. Seeing as this is new to everybody, can you tell me how successful this has been in other communities?
Okay, because the approved by the federal government since of them, so quite a few people moving to this kind of business. I went to Edmonton, Calgary, and even you have a closed facility in Christina Lake too, right? So I went there and take a look. The design, I go through the layout, everything. Everything is approved by the Health Canada, very high standard. So when I put this plan, before I install everything, the design, everything, I have to approve by the Health Canada first, the very high standard. So I have to follow the suggestion or according what the bylaw from them. And the business I go through with them, they starting growing, I mean everywhere. So this is the market need. But we are not growing anything like the greenhouse, not in our facility. We just using as a packaging facility. So all the product is, all the raw product is imported by outside. So we are not doing any like the growing or extraction, oil extraction machinery. So we only packaging the machine, I mean the packaging the product. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chu. Now call upon Councilor Thompson. She has her hand raised.
Thank you. Mr. Chu, are you going to be growing the cannabis in your facility?
No, because growing, because we only have 6.1 acre, so we already not enough. I mean, it's not feasibly economically growing on that site we future don't have a building over there, so left over not much for us to grow. And also, we're not planning to do greenhouse inside the facility, so we are not growing anything.
My second
Not
question.
outside, actually.
Okay, the other question I have is, your processing, are you going to be, manufacturing any product, edibles or whatever, from the product?
Yes, we're going to be doing the vitamin and supplement, and also we're planning to do the drink. But it's not like the Coca-Cola, whatever drink, right? So we're going to add the cannabis inside, but only for the drink, not for liquor. That's what we're going to plan now.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chu, I have a concern too, but it really is not directed at you. I do support the facility and the planned purpose. My concern is the development of 60th as an egress point for your business. And really, it's a question for the city that I need to direct. Mr. Chu's establishment, if it's approved and comes into production, will be using egress on dirt roads through residential neighborhoods. So my question, Mr. Redford, through you to staff, is when could we expect the development of 60th to facilitate this business and indeed other industrial businesses, future industrial businesses at the airport?
So through you, Chair, I think one of the, aside from obviously the cost, and it's not budgeted for this year, there is a leaseholder that has some of that space that we need to work with to take that back. I'd say between, an unbudgeted project and working with that leaseholder who I spoke with on Friday in some other matters and plan to catch up with them later this week. Those would be your two biggest hurdles in doing that.
So, Mr. Redford, I didn't really hear an answer to my question.
Yeah, I don't know the answer. I don't know the cost at this point. And Dolores, I'll ask you if there's been a cost to develop that strip of road. And I see, Justin, have you looked at anything like that?
No, I'm just, that's like crystal ball.
Yeah, so I mean, essentially, if access and using 60th were the key parts to moving this forward and wanting to have that information, then you would have to defer this until we could bring back a report and tell you when and how much that would cost.
Council, Mr. Redford, that is my concern. It is egress and the future development of these lands to facilitate industrial development. I know that there is nothing in the budget or even on the horizon.
Yeah, Dolores says something.
The development of 60th, if it takes a council motion to get that, I would be willing to do that, to move that motion after we dispose of this permit, development permit.
So to bring it back around, maybe we can deal with any questions for Mr. Chu, and then as we get into the reports and the merits of the report, we can excuse Mr. Chu and we can move on with the discussion. If that works for you, Chair?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Redford, for your instruction. I see two hands. Councilor Eburne-Stoodley?
Yes, just wondering how many jobs you predict will be created by this.
Yeah.
So we're going to be, because before we do, we're working on now, we have engineer everything. Before we doing any production, we have working on as soon as we
Having difficulty with the audio and the buffering.
Also approve the Friday shift. It's going to be 28 person totally, including me, on the phase one. Because the machinery is very high speed and high tech, so we don't need that manpower, but we still need totally 28 people on the packaging, warehouse, preparation. So the phase 1, if we running on 3 shift, we're going to have the total 28 people. And the phase 2 going to be 26. But we planning, if we extend the phase 2, we're going to using the phase 1 as production and using the phase 2 as a warehouse. Because the machine is not big, not large machine. So very compact machine, so we can using 12,500 on the phase 1 for production, and then the second phase the same size for warehouse.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chu, for your response. I'm seeking some guidance here from the CAO. Shall we move the motion on as presented and go from there?
So through you, Chair, if we're done with Mr. Chu, we would exclude him from the meeting, and he can watch obviously online as everybody else can. So if there's no other questions, maybe we'll start with that.
I see no other questions from council on this matter.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chu, I would like to thank you for your participation and coming forward to answer our questions. And please follow the results online from our meeting, as I believe it is being live streamed. So, thank you very much.
Councilor Zielinski's hand is
Thank
up.
you.
Councilor Zielinski, did you have a question before Mr. Chu left?
Not for Mr. Chu, just to extend on what Councilor Moslin was talking about previously.
Okay, perfect. Okay, and Councilor Moslin, your question to me was, should we move the motion? This council seems to have some discussion before a motion is put forward. That's a little different than I'm used to, but if that's kind of been the style, so kind of roll with that. And so it doesn't have to be this motion, any motion the council wants to put forward. And Dolores just did have one comment about the airport master transportation plan, I believe it is.
Yeah, so the airport and industrial plan that we have coming forward would take into account the road and would be putting forth recommendations for some costs. And there was some costing done for a full development of that about 5 or 6 years ago. But that included, I believe it was included sewer and water and everything. And so now that we have the water line in there, all that would be left would be the road paving, so road and storm, and potentially some lights. So we could get some rough costs for that, but I would say it would probably be best to wait until we do the airport industrial plan, which would incorporate this in it, which is this year.
Yes, Councilor Zielinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two issues that I have with this development. The odor issue, I don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. I've got a sister that works for the post office, and they don't do any processing at the post office. But boy, when that pot truck comes in, everyone knows about it. So the odor is going to be there. I've been to this circus before when we're dealing with odor and odor complaints, and it's not a fun one. It goes around in circles. Who enforces? Who doesn't enforce? What are you measuring? The levels and everything like that. But I'll skip over all that stuff. And my biggest question is, we've got a very big warehouse building there built, but no plan for access. They're going through a dirt road. So I don't know why 60th Street wasn't mentioned before the building was created. And I also know we've been telling other people in the community that, oh, you cannot have a hangar at the airport because the master plan isn't done yet. So I'm trying to get straight in my mind is, if the master plan hasn't been done yet and we're telling people you can't develop, how come the taxpayer was on the hook for a $400,000 water line and now a new road without a plan of other than one developer at the end. So, yeah, too many red flags for me on this one. And I'll be voting against it. So there's just too many red flags there. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councilor. Councilor Thompson?
Yes, thank you. I think, and I hear the concerns of Councilor Zielinski. Having said that, there is private land. I believe it is zoned appropriately. There is the availability of gazetted road access, albeit dirt road. It's going to create a number of, I would think, very well-paying jobs that we need in this community desperately. And so I am quite prepared to put forward the motion as written, which is that council approve the issuance of a development variance permit, inclusive of conditions for design, installation, maintenance, and monitoring to mitigate for odor, light pollution, and noise, to reduce the setback from 100 meters to 68 meters from a residential zone, and from 100 meters to 90 meters from a community use zone, to allow a cannabis processing facility at 105 60th Avenue on property legally described as, and I'm not going to read all of that. So that's my motion.
Yes, thank you, Councilor. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councilor Korolek, seconds. Okay, thank you. Now, is there anybody who wishes to speak to the motion? I see none. I have mentioned my concerns, and Councilor Zielinski has echoed them. That we really don't have a timeline or a development plan other than a vague reassurance that sometime in the future there will be an airport master plan. I support the development variance permit, but I really, I'm going to need some timelines and some budgeting to see 60 has become a reality. Anyhow, that's my last comment. I'm over to you, Councilor Zielinski.
Sorry, in clarification, Councilor Moslin, that Dolores has brought forward is Birch is paved. Minor tweak, but Birch is a paved road.
I'm sorry, Councilor, could you, CEO, could you repeat that again?
That Birch is a paved road. Dolores just had mentioned that. You'd referenced it as a dirt road.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Zielinski?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I just go back to the idea of when we approve things that are going to affect the community, that the community should have a say, and especially with now industrial traffic going through the regional district and affecting those people there. I just think it's a good thing to ask what they think. Again, ask for input, not approval, but at least give the community an opportunity to comment before we cause them grief, I guess.
Yes, thank you, Councilor, for your comments. Are there any other comments on it or questions on the motion? Councilor Korolek.
Just quickly, how far along is Mr. Chu in this development? Yeah, that's my question. I'd like to know how far.
So, through you, Chair, I'd ask Dolores. I mean, he's built the building. Go ahead.
Yes, the building's built, and he's been sourcing the production machines. And we did send out letters to the surrounding property owners as part of the legislative development variance permit process. And so we did receive those, and they are, I believe, the regular report.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Sheets.
I didn't hear Dolores' last comment.
Yeah, we just to staff, we are having trouble with your audio. Anyhow, thank you.
I think it's just, Dolores, if you could speak up a little bit. You're just talking quiet enough that it keeps trying to cut you out. If you just sort of
Yeah, Dolores just said.
A little bit more.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, Dolores had noted that he has constructed the building, and the rest of the work that we understand he's undertaken is as far as sourcing equipment, sourcing product, etc. And the city's processes for the DVP have been followed, which is sending out notification to the property owners, including the RD.
Okay, thank you. I still see Councilor Zielinski again. Are you still put your hand back up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. As I said, been here before, and so seeing that, hopefully I learned something. So I request a recorded vote when you do move the motion forward, please.
Okay, certainly. All votes in opposition are recorded. Councilor Korolek?
So what, if any, response has the city received on those letters of notification?
So through you, Chair, they were attached, and I'm just checking to see if they were attached to this. Just checking. I believe they were attached. Yeah, they're attached to the package.
Yes, as was the previous request. Yeah. Thank you. We did get, there has been noted that there were a couple letters. So there is a motion on the floor. And I see no other speakers. So I would like to bring the decision forward and call the question. Okay, all those in favor of the development variance permit as presented, raise your hands. Thank you. All those opposed? Okay, I'd like to record that Councilor Zielinski and Councilor Eburne-Stoodley were opposed. Okay, thank you very much. Now, I did speak about my concerns about 60th, and I did ask for advice. I don't know if, Councilor Redford, perhaps you can reassure me that we are going to be able to get more definite plans for the development of 60th without a council motion. Thank you.
So through you, Chair, definitely not a councillor, CAO.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Can we bring the mayor back in?
Yes, would you like to bring the mayor back in for this, or?
Yes.
Yeah, we should
I believe that would be appropriate, as this is now about city infrastructure. And Councilor Zielinski, you do have your hand up.
Yes, can I speak?
Please.
So in a perfect world, I guess, this building's been up for a little while. We know that it's an industrial building. So the one thing that would have probably been expected by me is to see that 60th Avenue actually highlighted on our 20-year capital plan.
Here.
Before we got here, sort of thing. So that's the kind of forward thought I look forward to in our 20-year capital plan, to say, yeah, we know this is going ahead. Let's stick it in there now, even if it's 20 years from now. But it's those kind of things I'd like to see on our development plan.
And so
Thank you. And I'd like to comment, rather than the 20-year plan, I'd like to see it in the 5-year financial plan. If we are really intent is to make an industrial area with industrial buildings, well, then the city needs to do its part.
Yeah. And so
anyhow, the mayor is now back in, so I see the chair to him. And Mayor, we are discussing the development of 60th as part, although the council has disposed of the request for a variance permit.
So, and just to answer your question, former Chair Moslin, now Councilor Moslin, Dolores indicated that 60th is part of that airport master plan, and so we do not require a motion at this time. We will be looking at that as part of that plan, and that is on my radar to get that project moving forward along with the OCP. As I understand, those are big planning pieces that impact development in those areas and impact the community as we move forward in their priorities. The mayor's muted.
back. Thank you, Councilor Moslin, for taking the chair.
Thank you for taking it back.
I know, you took a long time. The next item of business is the Salvage Opportunities Land Acquisition Program. We've been talking about this for a while. I think they've really struck a balance here where they're protecting the city and the assets we have, but also, when in doubt, we're giving as much as possible back to the residents in terms of not wasting anything, making sure as little as possible goes to the dump. So there are some outstanding questions there in terms of council and whether people can actually take things from their house and sell them. I think those are some of the fine issues of this that we could discuss. But overall, I'm quite impressed with the report. And so looking for council to place this on the table as a motion. The council directs staff to implement a property salvage program. Can I have a motion for that? Councilor Korolek, Councilor Stoodley, and open up for discussion.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, can we jump in and just provide some context before the questions and maybe answer a couple? Yeah, so an incredible amount of work has gone into this salvage piece. This is a piece of the program. Thursday there will be a workshop with council that moves through some of the charter operational pieces and also gets more into that real estate strategy. And this is really developed so that it does not hamstring council in any of those future decisions. And that's why it's written specifically to say that it's maintaining value of the reinvestment program, some cost recovery, minimizing costs, waste, risk, and liability. There's a greater discussion later about some of the other components of these homes that may be remaining and what council wants to do with them. So that I just want to really temper to say there's a bigger conversation that needs to happen, and this report is not meant to hamstring that discussion. And I just asked Graham if I missed anything.
No, that's through the worship. The main thrust of this is something that there's been a lot of discussion on over the last several months. We're hearing reports that some unmanaged salvage, and I think it's fair to say some by homeowners and some by other people who are scavenging for some of those materials. They're starting to happen, and I think having some parameters to manage salvage in the area is appropriate at this time to not see that kind of go into a bit of a more chaotic situation.
Thank you, Graham. And Councilor Zielinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the word implement that has me concerned on this because it is just a piece of. I would like to change implement to design and present because I'd like to see how this fits into the in-kind portion that staff is building, how it fits into the real estate strategy, how it might fit into thinking outside the box as far as a film set and what might be needed there. There is a lot of pieces to this, and before we start having someone give away stuff, I would like to see all those pieces together so that we can look at them in one chunk to say we're on the right direction. So it's just that word implement. Definitely design it, bring it back, let's see how it looks with all those other pieces, and so that we can move forward. That's sort of where I'm at.
So to answer the question, through your worship, it is intentional. Implement is an action that would be taken if approved. And I guess the background, and I'm still learning about it being fairly new, there are some expectations, and I don't know where those expectations came from. I think a lot of it came from some of the initial conversations that happened with the homeowners regarding this in-kind, and we've chatted a little bit about that. And so we were trying to get something off the ground for the homeowners that would not impact the greater program, but would be a kind of a show of goodwill and follow through from some of those earlier discussions. So it's been very, very, very tricky. And Councilor Zielinski, you're absolutely right. There is a bigger program that this feeds into, and we did piece it out really because we're starting to close some of these deals. and trying to have an answer for some of these residents. That's why it's in front of you today. And sorry, Graham.
Through your worship, further to the CAO's commentary there, some of the issues, there's a timeline risk in pursuing or in kind of proceeding later on with this. One is that the administrative and contracting costs as well as risk and liability increase once the city owns these properties and the private individuals want to be doing the salvage once it's our property. And so some of the deals have closed, and so with fairly minor salvage governed through a process that Keystone, who's very, very aware of the overall bulk of value, if some of those can be permitted out of that, with larger items as well as other opportunities that come forward, be discussed with council in short order. I think the concern about waiting through middle of June is that we start to take on more risk, as well as there's some concern about pushback from the residents and property owners.
Yeah, and Justin, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, through your worship. A couple of things I just want to make very clear. First of all, the salvage that we are initially considering here would have effectively zero cost value in regards to any kind of resale or basically cost after the fact. They're really insignificant type of items here. So that's an important point. And I think, as Graham just alluded to, if we are going to consider a salvage program, which there is some expectation in regards to the property owners, it is much better to do it while they are in possession of the property to reduce our liability. We are contractually protected in regards to that, as the owners are required to present the property upon closing to materially the same condition as when the deal was struck. So again, we've taken those things into account. I think generally there's general consensus, a few details to be worked out, that the salvage that would be allowed would be similar to what would be under any typical real estate transaction in regards to chattels, if that makes sense. So I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Justin. And Councilor Moslin, then Councilor Zielinski. Councilor Moslin?
Completely frozen.
It looks like Councilor Moslin's zapped. So going to Councilor Zielinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm not going to speak to the timing of this and who owns what or who doesn't. We were hoping to see something of this in kind and all this stuff previous to it. What my concern is all the taxpayers in this community are facing a very big deficit on this project, from $3 to $6 million, and we have to try and get as much value out of some of this stuff, and this is the only stuff we've got that's coming out of it, so that all the taxpayers don't see that burden down the road. So again, if like Justin has told us, this is normal goings on as with any sale, and people would take out what they would, then it's a normal sale. I don't see that that's what we have in front of us. I see that different things people want to grab. I'm from the prairies, so some of the landscaping in some of these houses people would love to get a hold of. I don't know what community we're building so that these other people can move into, but I know some of the trees and brushes and whatnot would probably be transplanted and make a very nice community. We have tree farmers in the community that would let us know whether that's possible or not. I don't want to give away, I don't know what value is being given away, I guess. Let's put it that way. So that's why I'm saying is let's get everything on the table. Let's get the in-kind program. Let's get the real estate strategy. Let's look at everything on a whole and not do this piecemeal. Thanks.
Councilor Thompson.
Yes, through you to our CAO, do we have to make a decision on this today? Is there any urgency, or can that be put off until we've had our workshop.
You know, I'm hearing from Graham that there is some urgency here and that these issues are coming forward. I see it as a very well-written document that basically covers Councilor Zielinski's concerns about making those judgment calls. Is it going to be worth our while to dig out a tree and move it to some other location? The question will be answered, I think, by our staff, and that we need to implement this and make that decision today, Councilor Thompson. But I'll hand it back to Mr. Redfern.
Yeah, and so
I have another follow-up, if I may.
Okay.
And that is, if this is approved, or when this is approved, do the property owners have they were sort of, I think, promised salvage rights, but can they go in and take those, the cupboards or fencing or whatever you have, and sell it? Rather than using it for themselves, like, would that be an issue?
So to answer your first question regarding timing, and the mayor kind of hit it there. Really, that risk and liability piece is part of the timing. Also, right now is when many of these people will also be making their plans moving forward. As far as the products themselves, I guess we should be clear. We're not talking about cabinets or windows or doors or any of those pieces. We're talking really exterior features, whether it be some fencing and some sheds, and interior features that would normally be part of a transaction. I think Justin maybe can build off that a little bit.
I can speak to that. Even Duncan just mentioned, or through your worship, Duncan just mentioned sheds. I don't think sheds or anything that requires any kind of building permits to be moved would be considered under this salvage. If I can give some context, I'll just step back. Part of this salvage concept was something that we explored early on in regards to making up the in-kind difference between pre-flood and post-flood. I think council's made some decisions that have gone a long way towards closing that gap. So the in-kind salvage portion now is arguably less valuable than what it was before, but there are some people that are still holding on to that concept. But specifically to the items that we were talking about when I refer to chattels, under a typical real estate transaction, anything that is not attached to the physical structure would be actually available to be removed from the home as part of that purchase. So I'll give you a few examples of that, Council. Fridges, stoves where you plug in, they would go with the seller. But a hot water tank or cupboards or anything that's screwed to a wall or anything, built-in furniture, that would have to remain from this perspective. In regards to outside materials, we are talking some shrubs that people would like to salvage, some fencing and that type of thing, you know, some pottery and all the rest of that. Again, under a typical real estate transaction, people would have the right to remove that as part of the purchase and sale. Everything's up for agreement. That's really where we're headed relative to some of this stuff. But ultimately, again, I just want to reemphasize that we don't foresee any real salvage value in any of the materials that we're considering here. Just in regards to, as the mayor spoke to, the costs of associated to try and reuse something just does not have a lot of value associated to this point. And I just remind council that, you know, from a governance perspective for staff at an operational level, we are considering the project charter that very clearly states under item number 2 that capital preservation, to Councilor Zielinski's point, is key. So we wouldn't make any decisions that hinder that guiding principle.
And Graham, as far as people reselling and that piece of it, I mean, the intent in every discussion we've had to date is this is for the owner's use, not their family or extended family. Now, it could be difficult to regulate, but again, they're not really substantial items. So,
yeah, I think this is something for council consideration, but I think regulating or managing it is challenging. I think the intent that, as Mr. Dinsdale said, if it's going to, or I'll paraphrase, if it costs us more to manage the items, then they're worth in terms of selling them, is it worth us managing them? So I think the governance of the process, a form that has to be submitted to Keystone on what would be there, an approval process, and then an inspection process at closing, things like that help make sure we're not, giving away the barn, I guess.
All right, thank you. And Councilor Zielinski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just as Justin said, our program charter, which we haven't dealt with yet or hasn't been approved yet, so hopefully we'll see that come back soon. But I'll go with Councilor Thompson's suggestion. We've got 3 days until the workshop where a lot of this other stuff will be discussed. I don't think digging up a bush or taking a piece of fence, 3 days waiting is going to be a big issue. So I'm hoping we can, through that workshop, go through all these things. And again, as Justin had explained, the fridge, the stove, things like that, we understand that from our document here that we read. Those details aren't necessarily there. And that's why I'm looking forward to the discussion as far as going through those issues and then coming out at the end of Thursday with a clear direction. I see that as a good plan to look at everything instead of taking a couple of time up with it right now. So.
Thank you, Councilor Zielinski. I totally disagree. I think we need to move forward on this, and I don't expect that the workshop coming up on Wednesday will shed any more light at this point on this issue. It's been in front of us a number of times. It's a well-written report, and I think it's an assignment of responsibility that is being taken very seriously by our staff, and I'm going to vote for it, not hold it up.
Well, I hope we learned something on the workshop Thursday.
Councilor Thompson.
Yeah, I'm sure we will learn something, but I'm hearing that there is a bit of an urgency to get this resolution through. And so I would be prepared to put forward the recommendation that council direct staff to, now you had a different word than implement, I think. A property salvage program to achieve the following outcomes: maintaining value for reinvestment and cost recovery, minimizing cost, waste, risks, and liability, and providing property owners the use of reclaimed and recycled materials.
Thank you, Councilor. And do we have a seconder for that? Councilor Korolek. And again, on Councilor Zielinski's issue with the terminology there, I think at this point was answered in terms of this being something that is needed immediately. And Councilor Zielinski is suggesting that this be wrapped up in a more extensive report, but would not address the immediate action that's required. So, calling for the question. This is to proceed with implementing. All those in favor?
A point of order, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Councilor Moslin, did he remove his... Oh.
Councilor Moslin has rejoined by telephone due to internet problems.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Zielinski.
Councilor Zielinski, or Councilor Moslin, are you ready to vote on this matter?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, and all those in favor?
I am in favor.
And opposed? Councilor Zielinski. Motion is carried. Thank you, Council. Moving down the list, definition of nonprofit food service. We have an extensive report, and I would ask for Mr. Redfern to address this matter.
Sure. So through your worship, incredible amount of work has been done on this. This has come forward as a result of the March 11th resolution from council asking for a definition. And so the definition is twofold. One, it creates a new use, the charitable or nonprofit food service. And two, it identifies within restaurant that charitable or nonprofit food service does not apply within restaurant zoning. And so if approved, this would essentially result in spot zoning for any charitable or nonprofit food service. And it is expected when we get into the OCP and we start updating zoning at that time, council would consider where this would be acceptable within that zoning plan. So it essentially says if any charitable or nonprofit food service starts between the adoption of this and when the OCP is done, it would have to come to council for a spot zone and would be judged on a case-by-case basis. And then when we hit the OCP, council will have to consider whether it remains that way or it gets added in.
All right, council, and you see the motion that's being presented. Can I have a mover for the motion?
If I might,
Councilor Korolek raised her hand. Can I have a seconder for that?
I'll second it for discussion.
Councilor Thompson, and discussion, open.
Okay, thank you. We've talked definitions in the zoning bylaw over and over and over and over. And this is just piecemealing it. And I would like to suggest that this be postponed. I just don't see the urgency in it at the moment. And that we have a workshop and discuss all of the definitions that we have gone round and round and round and round and come to some agreement prior to redoing the OCP and the zoning bylaw, because we're just going around in circles, and I would really like the opportunity to have just a workshop on what the definitions are, and if they're not satisfactory to members of council, then for some constructive criticism and suggestions on what can be included to improve them. I would, well, I've already seconded for discussion, but I would, if I can, put a tabling motion or a deferral motion on this particular.
And let other people speak.
Yeah, I think there's a chance we could just defeat it, Councilor Thompson, might be the easiest way around this.
Okay.
But waiting for speakers, Councilor Zielinski, then Councilor Krog.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to address Councilor Thompson's request is we did that a year ago. We had a 2-day workshop over on Riverside there, and nothing came of that. So I'm scratching my head just like you. We know we need them in there. I go to Margaret Steele's report. She knew we had to get the definitions in there. So I don't know what the answer is other than put them out there, do the public hearing, and get it. Yeah, we're gonna have the discussion. We said that we'd have the discussion with the community. Yeah, and like I said, we already have a resolution on the books to do that. I just don't know why we're not.
Councilor Krog.
Yeah, there's some clarification through you from staff, I guess. This is, the way I read it, it's the definition we were looking for, and it clears up the difference between a restaurant and a charitable food service. So I'm not seeing anything other than that. Am I correct with that?
So through your worship, that is correct. This is what council asked for March 11th. Everything else that council asked for on March 11th was deferred. Emergency shelter and supportive housing options until a public workshop is set up for discussion. So we're working off the most recent, or the last resolution, which was defined this.
Back to Councilor Krog.
Yeah, so we're going to either pass or defeat, whatever. But just again with the clarification, someone said, I think it was Councilor Zielinski said, public process. That is this going to public process or no? This is, we accept that and then it goes in and then we deal with it with the OCP. So I need clarification.
Yep, through your worship, I'll ask Dolores to talk about a zoning update and the process for that.
Yeah, anytime there's an amendment to the zoning bylaw, there is a public process, a public hearing, and It'd be as lengthy as council would like it to be.
Sounds good.
All right, Councilor Zielinski.
Yeah, thank you. So if we're going through the public process, I don't see the big deal with throwing a few other definitions in there. Getting the feedback. At the end of the day, council can either put one, all of them, or no definitions in the bylaw. But if we're going through the public process, let's use our time and money wisely and put more than one definition out there.
So just so I'm clear, Your Mayor, I would like to clarify, Councilor Zielinski is suggesting that we define what we've defined here, also an emergency shelter and supportive housing. We bring forward those definitions, and then if council likes those definitions, we move through the zoning process for them?
Now, that seems to be what I'm hearing, Councilor Zielinski.
Yeah, I guess what I'm suggesting is go back to that motion. We had, I think, 3 or 4 definitions on it. We'll fulfill that motion as far as taking it to the public. We can add the community kitchen onto it, and we can have a public process and let people speak.
So for clarification, when I read the old motion and I wasn't here, it says until a public workshop is set up, whereas the zoning update is more of a public hearing and not really a workshop. So I just would like to clarify what that expectation is.
Yeah, I think workshop, the word was just thrown in there. It's the public process on letting the public talk about what those definitions mean to them. And as far as the old resolution, I am not suggesting adding them into zones. All I'm suggesting is the first half of that motion that says gets the definitions on the table.
Okay.
Thank you. And Councilor Thompson.
No, thank you. I hear what you're saying, Councilor Zielinski, and I totally agree. We want the public process. But I think as a council, from my perspective, I would like a workshop on the definitions. We received some, I believe, that were from Kelowna. And let's have a workshop, massage those, agree that what we want to take forward to the public, and then go out and get their thoughts on it. But I don't think it would be wise just to go out with really nothing that council has had a look at first and is prepared to take out to the public. That's just my opinion.
Okay, and Councilor Zielinski, I'm trying to bring this to a motion or to a decision at this point on this motion.
Yeah, that's for sure. But the issue is we've already taken them out to the public. That's the resolution that was put in front of us. Those definitions have been put out in the public already. We have an existing resolution and paper in front of us, even though it's old. So that's, yeah, I understand. I hear where you're coming as far as let's get our head around what we're asking before we take it to the public. But again, that's already happened.
Rebuttal, Councilor Thompson.
Did we agree to those definitions as a council, or were they defeated?
They weren't defeated. The staff threw them in front of us at the 9th hour there, and
You were presented for information. I don't know whether through in front of us makes it sound like it was a good process.
Well, it was an actual bylaw that was presented to us. So.
Okay, Council, we're voting on this motion at this point, which was moved by Councilor Korolek, seconded by Councilor Thompson. All those in favor and opposed? We'll have to do that again. Hands were short. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, the motion carries. All right, Council, the next item of business is to Mr. Redfern in the opening of city facilities. So Duncan, the floor is yours.
Sure, so thank you very much, Your Worship. Council was very intimately involved when we went through our closure of the facilities. And so just kind of bringing that back around, you have a resolution in front of you today that essentially says that as soon as we can meet WorkSafe's requirements, and as soon as it's safe to do so, we're gonna start reopening facilities, including outdoor spaces, recreation spaces, city hall, public works. Some will happen obviously before others, and we're gonna move our way through the 6 steps that the province is, WorkSafe has outlined. We've already completed a risk assessment last Friday or Thursday. We've also moved into some internal protocols, and really it's saying, well, we want to open as soon as we can meet these safety precautions, which some will be this week, others will be a little more phased as they become more complicated.
All right, Council, there's a motion crafted in front of you that talks about reopening of facilities and managing that in terms of coordinating with WorkSafe BC, provincial health officers, coordinating with the regional district and with the school board. Councilor Zielinski, Stoodley, Councilor Stoodley has his hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to pass on some concerns from the baseball teams. They almost aren't, it sounds like they don't want the ballparks opened up just yet, just because there are some teams, like the leagues haven't found a way to social distance yet. So they just had some concerns there.
Okay, and duly noted, I think at this point in time we're, did we get this on the floor? Did we have a motion on this? Councilor Thompson and Councilor seconding it would be Councilor Korolek. Never let me down. Okay, so taking into consideration that the motion actually addresses dealing with some of these issues as Councilor Stoodley just brought up, that the openings be coordinated with these other bodies according to the rules that are being established by the province. So opening up for further discussion. I don't see hands going up. Can I ask for the question? All those in favor and opposed? So we're assigning that responsibility to our staff to work within those parameters and open up when things are safe. And I don't know that really reflects on council meeting in chambers or not. Mr. Redfern, do you have some prognostication on that?
Yeah, so I mean, June 15th is our next meeting, and we're hoping to maybe phase council back into the chambers, but as mentioned, I think by maybe it was Councilor Thompson, you know, we have to appreciate that, you know, there's some risk, and so we need to make sure the timing is right and that we can put those measures in place to control that. And you know, based on our 6-foot span, and you can kind of see the council chambers right now, it may limit our gallery and it may limit our public hearings, and so that's something we still have to wrap our head around, how we can space council out and still have some space, right? So we're working our way through that.
Great, thank you very much. Councilor Zielinski?
Just on that timeline, when's the elevator gonna get fixed?
It's like 24
It's like 24 weeks, yeah.
They're scheduling it end of October, early November at this time.
Okay.
Mayor, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Councilor Mott, on a point of privilege, I think I'm in the waiting room.
Oh, yes, he is.
Yeah, we're letting you in, Councilor.
You're back.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Thanks for
Did you miss out on speaking to anything while you were absent there?
Well, yeah, I was trying desperately to handle the tech and follow the conversation. My question is about the one that just passed. Public facilities, does that mean the washrooms?
Yes, that's something, through your worship, that we're working on right now. The campground is another area we're working on. Morris was working on a draft plan, and there's been a lot of emphasis from WorkSafe around employee safety within those facilities, and PPE and schedule, not only to protect the employees but also to protect the public. So that one's going to take a bit of work, but we put some time into it. We're hoping, you know, within a week we could probably be open with those new protocols in place.
Anything further, Councilor Moslin?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, for that consideration. The other question that has a motion was the motion that was passed ahead. I was not very clear on what actually happened in the previous motion. Did it go to is it going to come forward again? Are those definitions coming forward? I missed whether or not that was passed or carried or what have you.
That was carried, my understanding that it was carried on a 4-3 vote.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Sorry I wasn't there.
But the discussion centered around placing it in the package of changes that have to come in future and bringing that as a package to the public rather than proceeding with individual presentations of this nature. So I'm not sure where that's going to go at this point in terms of staff.
Okay, Your Worship, thank you for that summary.
Okay, Council, we have an information item, the quarterly report, and I'll open that up for either a presentation or questions. Mr. Redfern.
Sure, we'll kick that right over to Juliet. She's ready to go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so the first quarter of the year, there's not a lot of transactions happening. Our revenues for utilities, only because our billing is in February, and we don't record on the accrual basis. That only reflects a month and a half of revenues. Tax notices have just are in the process of going out right now in May, so we don't see any tax revenues for the first quarter of the year. The rest of the significant items are in the report there. I guess if there's any questions regarding anything, I could try to answer them.
Okay, Council, questions on the quarterly report? And I'm not seeing any hands up at this point. Councilor Moslin.
Thanks, Your Worship. I turned my video off simply to make sure I try not to get crashed out again. I guess I do have several questions. I'm surprised I even got the floor over Councilor Zielinski. I guess the first question might be we have improved revenues as part of this March 31st. At the end of March 31st, I guess has the Chief Financial Officer been able to pinpoint some impact on revenues because of the COVID pandemic?
Yeah, so through your worship, we're anticipating fairly stable revenues. We've run some information regarding demographics, and we're really waiting on that first billing cycle to understand kind of what that looks like. So I guess your answer is we're aware of it and we're monitoring it, but we haven't actually had an opportunity to see any data on any change, and that's coming soon. Go ahead, yeah, go ahead.
So through the mayor, yes, I've actually looked at where we're at. The concern here is the cash flow impact and whether we'll be receiving our utility payments, on time and in the same volume as we have in the past, because we have deferred the penalties on that. So I've looked at where we were at as of the end of last week, and we look like we're about 90,000 lower than we have been in previous years, but the normal due date is not until June 4th, and we still have the rest of this week. So it's hard to make a determination now, but it looks like people are still paying regularly, and anecdotally from staff, it looks like a lot of people are actually switching to online banking, which is good. And I'll be looking at it again by the due date to see whether there's any material changes.
The intent was to bring some information back at the June committee of the whole.
Yeah, it would have to be June just because of the deadline.
Yeah, just because of the deadline.
Okay, I don't see any further questions, and this is received for information, but receiving it as part of the agenda and approving the agenda means we don't really need a motion to receive this information. So moving forward, no late items, questions from the public or media that may have happened as today's meeting progressed. Do we have anything from the public?
Nope.
Nothing. Les is saying there's nothing, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Les is saying there's no comments from the public, Mr. Mayor.
No comments from the public. Okay, thank you very much. And Council, can I have a motion under section 90 to go in camera? Councilor Thompson, seconded by Councilor Stoodley, and all those in favor. So we're in camera, and can I call an adjournment while we get organized? So meeting is temporarily adjourned, say